What a beautiful day to do a recording. Typical Scottish weather. But listen, let's go on a drive and I'll take you to Johnston, to where we were working, and we can chat about the Cardiff experience on the way. So part one, we looked at my journey of finding faith in View Park and how God had sent the team to come and tell us that good news as a community and how lives were being transformed. Then from school heading to Calcarb, and then from Calcarb heading to Tilsley College and Motherwell at Glow to study for that year. And as part of that, we talked about going to Cardiff for my placement. Now, when the church asked me in July 2000 to go and work with them for that year, the on-the-job training, it was quite an exciting step of faith. I shared last week about how my friend Ian had said, "John, just trust." And this was really my first step of getting into a ministry outside of View Park, outside of the norm, but actually discovering that God was doing something elsewhere. Working in Cardiff was a real challenge. First thing was a language barrier. I'll never forget doing the first talk that I'd done down there with a group of young people, and somebody coming after it and saying, "John, that sounded brilliant, but we had no idea what you were saying." I think they hoped that I would have come with subtitles. The church at Thornhill were way ahead of their time. They had decided when they were building their building to build a community hub, a community centre, which would have a private nursery, conference facilities, a coffee shop. They would have ministries running through the week. I was able to help establish some of them in that 2 years that I was there. I met some of my best friends in those 2 years when I was at Cardiff. I lived with an amazing family, Mr. and Mrs. Hully, who took me in and who adopted me as part of their family. They weren't part of the church. They had another church set up that they attended in Cardiff, but they lived just a stone's throw away from the church. And you know, that couple cared for me and loved me and helped me and supported me, and they were an amazing couple. But as part of my time at Thornhill, Jeremy McCoyd also came to work with the church at that time as their teaching pastor. And Jeremy took me under his wing and mentored me. We looked at the book of Timothy in the Bible and we studied it each week. Jeremy invested in my life. Again, he was new to being a pastor. I was brand new to being a pastor. But the support that Jeremy gave me in that time, again, would prepare me for future ministry. You see, God has used many people through the years to connect me with others. Again, that connection with Mr. and Mrs. Hully was as a result of Joe Baxter and her friend Dan and Rachel Hully coming to View Park on a Glow mission team. And suddenly when I arrive in Cardiff and I'm looking for somewhere to stay, Dan and Rachel opened that lifeline to go and stay with their mum and dad. And it was a precious time. It was an awesome time. But again, it was God moving and God's time through God's people. The 2 years was incredible, and the things that I dealt with in that time really helped build character, experience, and see what God was doing. But as much as the time at Cardiff was really exciting, it also brought its struggles as well. Being so far away from home, being so far away from Fiona. At that point, we weren't engaged. It wasn't until the second year that I was there that I got engaged to Fiona on a return visit back to Scotland. But a lot of stuff had happened as well. At that point, I really believed that God was calling me to full-time ministry for definite. But you can't imagine how it felt when time was coming to an end at Thornhill. And the church decided that after the work that I had done there and after the things that had been going on, they were wanting to try and establish and appoint a youth pastor to take some of the ministries that I had developed on. And I went for an interview for that post, and I fully believed that I was going to get it. Being part of seeing these ministries established and being part of supporting the team and loving the community at Thornhill, loving the church. The team of elders decided that they wanted to appoint someone a wee bit older, someone with more experience. And to be honest with you, it was probably one of the biggest disappointments that I had faced at that time. I couldn't understand it. I was trying to figure out what God was going to do next. And in my disappointment, in my discouragement, I kind of got a bit disheartened and wondered if ministry was really for me and if this was something that I was going to be able to do long term. So I came back to Scotland with a couple of things in mind. First of all was to ask Fiona to marry me, and I did that during that week that I was back. But also it was to go and visit Bobby Snedden that I had studied with at Glow. Bobby was an amazing guy. He'd worked in the railways and he'd been made redundant, and he came to study at Tyldesley because his desire was to see the church that he was in that had closed reopen and be reignited to be a church that connected with the community. And just before I finished at Tyldesley, Bobby had a conversation with me in the gents' toilet in Tyldesley, and he simply said to me, "John, remember Johnston." So when I came back that time, I thought, would there be a possibility of going and serving with Bobby with this idea of planting a church from scratch? That really excited me, to be honest, because I obviously had found Jesus through a church plant. And the words that Bobby said was, "Remember Johnston." So when I came back to Scotland, I went to the Glow Centre to get Bobby's number. And you'll never guess who walked out of the bookshop that day, but Bobby himself. He invited me to come and speak at his youth club the next night. This was a Wednesday night youth club that he ran for years, and there was an amazing group of young people there. So I was asked to go and speak at that the next night. I actually got into a lot of trouble because I bought Fiona's engagement ring, and I basically gave Fiona the engagement ring on the Thursday, and I used it as an object lesson on the Wednesday to talk about love to that team of youth club. And I got into so much trouble from some of the leaders saying you can't do that, but in my opinion, and even to this day, everything is a resource, so you have to use it. I'm glad she said yes. But that conversation with Bobby that night and going back to his house, we discovered that a lot of the gifts that they were missing in the team were actually gifts that I could bring. And as a young guy at 22, I was going to then look to plant a church with Bobby and Mary, with Graham and Flenos Burt as well, and we would see that church established. And that's why we're taking this journey through to Johnston just now. I want to take you on site to some of the places that are close to my heart and see what God was doing in that community. We've got lots of memories in Johnston, and one of them right at the start was when I told you that I came to speak at that youth club. I was there that night and I was standing at the door, as you can see, and a wee guy came to me, a wee guy called Stephen, and says, "Mister, are you going to come back here?" And as I looked up, I couldn't believe my eyes. Straight across the road from the church, there was a sign for a company called Thornhill Glazing Company. And I suddenly realised that maybe the Thornhill that I was in Cardiff wasn't the Thornhill that I had to be in, because actually the church is at the end of a street which is called Thornbrae, and this company had called itself Thornhill Glazing Company, and I took that as a wee sign that it was maybe time to move and come here.
Okay, our wee church here in the background that you can see was Ebenezer Gospel Hall. It closed its doors in 1990, whatever it was, 98, and we felt that God was calling us to open the doors again, start a wee church, try and get a witness going in the town of Johnston. So it took me anyway to Motherwell, to Tyldesley College, and it just so happened John Dick was in the same year that year, but it took us several years to 2002 before we met up again, started a lot of work in the community, especially amongst the children and in the schools, met lots of families, helped them understand the truth about God's great love. And here we are, 2002 it started, 2020 we're still going on. We're trying our best to communicate the gospel in a way that's appropriate for the people of Johnston. It's a lovely wee town, just normal working class people working away there. So it was great to have John help us, and then Fiona when they get married, and then of course they came to live in Johnston. And then Graham and Cleanos also came and joined us. We had a wee group of 6 that did lots of things in the community, and the gospel has been preached and people will get saved, and we're going on as best as we can.
So that was awesome, bumping into Bobby and Mary. Never planned that, but hey, God's good. Just like that first time I bumped into him. When we were moving to Johnston, we were trying to figure out where we would live, and really we needed God to do miracles. Mortgage companies don't give mortgages to people who say their employer is God. We had no savings, we had no backup, but we needed a flat. But there was a lady that came to the toddler group at Johnston, and she said, John, I've got a flat for sale straight across the road from the church, 8C Dimity Street. It was £45,000 and there was no way that we could get a mortgage. Then Fiona announced that she wanted to study at Glow, so it was a no-go. But then a year later, the same woman said to us, my flat's still available for sale. It's still £45,000. We want to give you as at the same price and honour that price that we said. So we looked to see if we could get a mortgage, and God did miracles in order for us to get this flat that was behind us. We had no way of getting a deposit. We had a prayer meeting on a Sunday afternoon and says, God, can you do a miracle? And the next day, believe it or not, God provided the deposit that we needed to be able to buy the flat here in Dimity Street so that we could serve through someone we had never met, but someone who had a heart for Johnston. And they blessed us and they gifted us and they helped us get it. We were involved in so many different ministries and we were kind of winging it in Johnston, to be honest, although I'm probably still winging it now with the things that we were doing. But when I arrived at Johnston, one of the first things that I did was had the opportunity to go into this school, Auchinlodment Primary, and do my first ever school assembly. And little did I know that that would become a major part of the work that I would be involved in school chaplaincy and helping support staff and pupils from a chaplaincy perspective. But in Johnston we were involved in so many different things. We would have outreach weeks, we would have family nights, we had youth clubs, we had the toddler groups, which, to be honest with you, when I started out here I struggled to see how a 20-year-old was going to work in a toddler group. But actually some of the relationships that I formed there, simply pouring cups of tea, still actually last to this day. A lot of the people from this community, which is very similar to View Park, experienced God in the way that we'd seen in View Park, and God was transforming lives. And as a result, our wee church in Johnston went from the 6 that Bobby talked about to 60 in a very quick period of time. We outgrew that wee building and we had to move to the other primary school, Thorn Primary, where we had our services there, where we've seen as many as 90 people coming, which was remarkable to see a church grow at such pace after it had closed all those years before. But Lincoln View Park, God was moving in individual people and individual families, and it was exciting to see through the youth clubs, through the camps, through the things that we were involved in, just loving people and serving people and helping people where they were at. In Johnston we had to be quite resourceful because we didn't have a lot of money to work with as a team. So part of the idea of our outreach weeks is we would come to places like this at the park and run a kids club with bouncy castles and things and try and get the attention of the community to come along, and then at night time do a wee kids club in the hall. But it was like that, trying to find resources that we could use as cheap as we could to try and make the biggest impact, and it was an adventure. When we saw the growth in the church at Johnston, going from that 6 to 60 that we talked about earlier on, we decided to move here to Thorn Primary School, where we had a massive hall, we had facilities for the Sunday school and the classrooms, the dining room to be able to have tea and coffee. And that's when we saw the most growth. It was almost like that analogy that if you've got a goldfish and you put it in a small tank, it'll only grow to the size that it's in. But we saw when we moved from the wee hall down the road to this facility, the numbers kept growing. To one point we had 90 people coming from the local community to come and engage with us as church, and those were exciting days. The town of Johnston itself is one of a lot of contrast, to be honest. You've got areas where it's extremely affluent and some beautiful houses and some beautiful places to live. But then you had other areas that were really suffering from poverty, again addictions, people struggling through life, employment issues and everything else. So to work in such a diverse area, we were seeing people coming from the most exclusive parts of this area, but also to the points where people were coming that they had absolutely nothing. And the thing I loved about church was it didn't matter when people came through the doors where they were from. There was an instant connection. They had Jesus in common, and that's what mattered, and that's what was changing lives. So it was a beautiful thing to see and absolutely awesome to be part of. again as one of the Glow mission teams that we had, with people visiting from all over the world. It was incredible. Folks from Italy, folks from Germany, folks from Scotland, England, Ireland, Wales would come for a week and we would do outreaches. We did one here in Speightstown in this old Catholic church, and we rented it for a week, and we had a kids club up here, we had a cafe in it. It was amazing. One day a wee guy turned up with his wee brother and he asked if he could come in. He was a wee bit older than we would have liked, but this day I just felt, yeah, I'm going to let him come in. And his family were transformed, and Gordon actually goes around preaching and speaking in churches all over the place, and he's just recently got married in Florida. I couldn't be prouder of him. Also that year there was a guy called Tam come along, and Tam again was a wee guy who brought his grandkids along to the kids club. And again, he was searching for something. Tam had a tough life, he had a difficult time, and actually he discovered the answer to his questions, the answer to his needs was a relationship with Jesus, and he found faith. Folks, I can't tell you enough how God changes individuals and as a result can change communities. And that happened as part of a simple week here in Speightstown telling families about the love of God. The ministry in Johnston was really exciting to be part of. Working with Bobby, Mary and Graham and Klinos, we seen amazing things happen. It had its challenges and difficulties as well. It was a real challenge of our faith to move to this area, to live in this area, to serve in this area, and trust that God would provide all of our needs. I talked about that concept of just trust, and the reality of that would be evident every day of trying to serve God in this community. There were so many similarities between Johnston and View Park. The people, the characters, the lives that were being changed. But we also recognised that our time at Johnston was potentially going to come to an end. We were seeking God to look to see what the future would look like. Would our future be in Johnston? We had just moved house to Speightstown, to another area, and bought a house with the idea that we potentially would be there forever. But we were feeling unsettled. And I always said to Fiona that if God moved us on from Johnston, we needed to be open to that. At that point we had Lois, we had Samuel, and we were thinking about schools and everything else, and we weren't sure how it was going to look. But actually, God was going to move us on, and that would take us towards Cumbernauld. We would never have expected it, but actually that conversation started, and that would take us on a new journey. So the idea of moving from Johnston after 7 years was a big deal. This was going to be a big step for us, another step of faith as a couple, and also now with a family. And it was a big deal. I don't know how you were feeling at that time, Fiona.
I think it was kind of heartbreaking actually, because we were so invested in the community of Johnston and being part of Dimity Street Church. It was almost like our first child, because the church was brand new and we'd been there from its very existence with Bobby and Mary and Graham and Klinos, and just seeing all the things that we'd seen and becoming part of that sort of family where everyone mucked together. There were no passengers, everybody took their gifts and abilities and put them into action. If there was cooking needing doing to serve church lunch, everybody was there serving and bringing food and bringing what they had to the table, as it were. If chairs needed put out, whatever, everybody just mucked in. And our house was open. People would be in and out of our house all the time, which has always been our policy. So to move away from the people and the place that you loved and who you kind of had planned to be with long term was quite hard.
It was, and I think for us, the idea of moving to a new location was going to be massive, because it was a different type of church, going from a church plant to an established church in a community that we didn't really know. We didn't have any dealings with Craig Albert Church before these days. We also had an opportunity to look at going and serving in another church, so we had two options at once, and we're kind of really seeking God to say, where do you want us to go as a couple? And I couldn't have done it without Fiona and the support that she's given me. But when we get married in 2003, we recognised that life for us as a family was going to be open for everybody else to come in and share what we had, share our love, share our faith, share our resources. And that's something that we believe in even till now as we live in Cumbernauld. So leaving Johnston was huge for us, but we recognised that even though it was difficult and in some ways didn't make sense, we had to do what God was telling us to do. But the church at Johnston, just like in View Park, and seeing how families were transformed. I think individuals like Donna, who gets saved, and she's now in heaven, and she was an amazing woman. I think of Danielle, who gets saved at camp, and now she's serving God full time in ministry. I think of loads of people. I could list so many people: Irene and Jimmy and Rena, and I think of so many people in that community that we engaged with and we loved, and we still love them. Just the past Sunday there, I was actually speaking at their church via Zoom, which was amazing, and getting to encourage them. And I'm so thankful that we get to still have that partnership with them even till now from a distance, but see the wee church is still going.
Absolutely.
So as I bring this session from the days in Motherwell at Tyldesley to Cardiff and then eventually Johnston, as I bring this to a close, I could tell you 100 stories, if not thousands of stories, that we don't have time to do. These Tuesday night sessions could keep going on and on and on if I told you of every story of every individual who has met God and who's connected with God in the churches that we've been part of. I think you'll have got the idea by now, is that I love God's design of the church, that He can bring people from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, and bring them to one place to worship Him, to learn together, to worship together, and to support each other in life. I don't think there's another organisation like it. And in Acts chapter 2, I've been reminded recently, I shared a few weeks ago, about the way the church connected together, the way they were devoted to each other. And I believe that that is the key to a healthy church, is that we are together in faith, we're together in worship, we're together in life. We're not just putting our faith into a wee compartment, and that when we turn up on a Sunday or a Tuesday, that's when we do church, and then outside of that we do our own thing. I believe that friendships, I believe that relationships, I believe that God wants to work in our communities through the local church, and we're seeing that even through lockdown. For me and Fiona, our journey of seeing churches established and planted and real people engaging with a real relationship with a real God, for me is what it's about. These empty chairs, yes, they make me sad, and I can't wait to fill them. I can't wait for you to be here with me. When I think of all the people we've baptised over the years, both in Craighalbert and in Johnston, it excites me to see people still walking by faith and still living it out. And those verses in Acts 2 tells us the heart of the people. And this is my desire, folks. My desire for our church, my desire for the church, is that we would be like the believers back then. I shared these verses a few weeks ago, but listen to this. It says, all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They shared life. I want to encourage you today to open your lives and to open your hearts to others. They went further than that. They shared everything they had. They sold their property, their possessions, and shared the money with those in need. I told you earlier on about how God did miracles to provide the house that we were in when we moved to Johnston. It was amazing, but it was all because one person felt God saying, listen, what I've given you, I want you to share it with somebody else to bless them and benefit them. I'll never forget when I spoke to that person, when I found out who they were, and says, why did you give that gift to us? And he says, John, it's no my resources at the end of the day. God just put it in my bank to wait for an opportunity to give it to someone in need. What a heart. And we were so blessed. It tells us they worshipped together at the temple each day. They met in homes for the Lord's Supper. They shared meals together with great joy and generosity. And they were praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And what was the result of that real authentic church? It says the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. Folks, this weekend, God added people to His number, added people to His church, added people to His kingdom. It's amazing. And I want to encourage you in this next part. Next week, I'm going to talk about the Cumbernauld days. 10 years we've been here, and we're so excited to be part of Craighalbert Church. I actually feel quite humbled to be part of your lives. And we're excited to see how God is going to take us in the next stage. But we want to look back next week at what God's been doing in this place, at this time. And the Lord bless you in the week ahead. Let's pray. Father, again, I thank you that we can come tonight. Thank you for the chance to share my story. But Lord, it's not about me. It's about what you're doing. It's about the impact that you're making. And I believe, Lord, you're still making that impact today. So help us, Lord, to love each other, to care for each other, to support each other, to see others' needs and reach out and bless them and meet them. And Lord, help us to trust you in the days that we live, as we live a life of faith in your name. Amen.